Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my Phantom thoughts. In this episode, we have a call from BJ from the Arcane Alienist podcast, continuing to talk about player agency, and a party of characters chases down a Nilbog wearing the invulnerable coat of Arn in Tales of the Dragon Slayers.
Hey, Pink Phantom, it's BJ. Just weighing in on the discussion of player agency, and I'm a little late to it. I kind of, Riley helped, his call really solidified something in my mind. My gut instinct about, randomly rolled stuff removing player agency was that no, it does not, because that's been part of the game from the beginning. And my reason being that your agency is in how you react to whatever randomly comes up. But I think Riley made a really good point of you still have to be a few steps ahead of where the players are so that you have time to telegraph. If you're wandering through some forest and you randomly encounter a forest creature, I think that's fair to just, hey, you rolled that, it happened. Let's get a reaction. Let's what are you guys going to do? I don't think that steps on player agency, but the example of the next hex over is a mountain range. Obviously, you should have been able to see the mountain, so you need to be on those kinds of things, maybe a little bit ahead of the where the players are when you're doing stuff like that, randomly rolled things. So he does make a good point there that I think I would stand by my idea that randomly rolled stuff doesn't remove player agency as long as the DM manages that, and that's of course why you need a DM to kind of be able to do that, to peer ahead and then to give the clues and the hints and to make the world to make sure there's some consistency and some logic behind it. Where I get upset, I think sometimes we can make a much more out of player agency. Like I've seen people claim that the DM's world building violates player agency. The DM will decide they've created a world where there are no hybrids. None of the humanoid species can crossbreed, so there are no half-elves or half-orcs. Well, half-elves and half-orcs are in the player's handbook. If I can't play a half-elf or a half-orc, you're a terrible DM, and that's ruined my agency as a player. No, it's not ruined your agency as a player. I mean, we can debate whether that's the sign of a good or a bad DM, but that isn't taking away the player's agency. The agency starts when the game begins, and you're making choices about how you respond to the events unfolding in front of you. So, but I will say where I have most felt my player agency taken away is a version of the no choice I make matters. And that's when you've got a DM who it all comes down to the skill roll. It all comes down to the skill roll. Nothing I can say to an NPC gets me a bonus or a advantage or even the opportunity that, hey, that just worked, as opposed to having to make a diplomacy check or a charisma check. No amount of sort of scouting ahead or planning ahead or creative thinking gets me out of a skill roll or gets advantage or, again, a bonus. So, I don't have to engage in any role playing or any creativity. I can just say I go up and use my, skill check to pick the lock or look for a trap. I don't have to describe how I'm doing it, and my description of what my player is doing has no effect. That to me is probably one of the most, I don't know, I guess because the way I approach playing when I'm a player, that'll bug me. When, the decision I make, I could have approached this situation from 6 or 7 different angles, and it doesn't matter. It's going to come down to the exact same skill roll. So my odds of success or failure have nothing to do with me as a player making choices, whether they're in character or out of character. That kind of bugs me. I think that's an erosion of player agency. But I feel like as long as I'm allowed to make decisions, and that affects, the world responds to my decisions, and it responds differently based on what decision I make as a player. That's where my player agency, I think, is preserved. So Anyway, that's a great line of discussion. I know it's gone across two different podcasts now with you and Evil Jeff, and everybody's weighed in. So anyway, great couple episodes there, and I look forward to listening to the next one. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you for the call, BJ. Yeah, I thought Riley made some really good points. I thought he expressed some things probably clearer than I did when I was trying to talk about it initially. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with, the random tables and such. I mean, I've used them myself, my solo play, to good effect. But I think being overly reliant on random tables for big picture and long term and just generic tables versus something that is more tailored. I think the term is bespoke that is used a lot when they talk about things that are specifically designed for a specific person or situation. But in order to put that together, you have to have a big picture idea of the world or the campaign that the adventure is taking place in. But there has to be sufficient information on the world available for the players to make meaningful choice. In the second half of what you talked about, where you have situations where you're not what you how you attempt to approach an obstacle or a question or situation or an NPC or a dungeon or wilderness area or what have you, and your approach doesn't seem to matter at all. It's just all down to the die roll. Yeah, that's pretty narrowing in what you can do. But I do think some of that is going to depend on some of that. I think is simply a matter of uh, experience of the people running the game. If you have someone that's new, they're going to tend to rely more on the systems of the game than their own judgment, and so they're not necessarily going to have the flexibility of mind or the mindset to take into account things that aren't, for lack of a better term, number oriented. They fall back on the rule book, which is kind of what's happening with on the player end with what you were talking about, with people being mad about not being able to select certain options for their characters because the GM has said that they're not using that and how they feel that takes away their choice as well. Because again, you're falling back on the system, on the game system as the default. So I think you brought up in your discussion both sides of that, the player side of that and the GM side of that, of falling too much back on the game systems. But I do think a dependency on a die roll or always using die rolls, how limiting that can be is somewhat dependent on the system and familiarity with the system or the system mastery aspect. Because I know in some live plays I've heard in like a fifth edition or third edition type version of the game, where people who are very familiar with that system and have built their characters in certain ways, which was, certainly a big part of third and 3.5 edition. And there's still a fair amount of that in fifth edition as well. But that character building aspect of knowing the system and working that system and knowing what class and subclass or taking levels in other classes and taking certain feats and how all that synergizes to give you those bonuses. I think a lot of uh, player agency and tools that characters have to deal with situations is built into that aspect of those types of games. But again, that's not the older school style play where, a fighter is a fighter, and other than maybe some of the gear they've got, they're basically going to be the same. It's going to be how the player uses the resources available to them is going to make the bigger difference than things like class, subclass, and skills and such. And I think in a lot of ways that really is the biggest difference between older school games and newer types of games is the resource management aspect of it. And just kind of a random aside, this isn't based on anything that you said, but just something my brain conjured up. I'm starting to wonder if this whole discussion, we talk about it as player agency, but I wonder how much of it is actually character agency. That is what the characters can accomplish, regardless of whether it's a number on their character sheet or whether it's gear that's on their character sheet or magic item they possess. And yes, the player is making the decision of how to combine those assets and what angle of attack to use on a given problem is, but it's really what the character is capable of doing that we're talking about. And looping back around to what you were talking about, the players that get mad when DMs deny them the ability to use certain parts of the game, certain character choices, racial choices, class choices, what have you. You know, all of that, how much of that is just in how we look at it, how different people look at what the game is, what role playing is. But I think I'm going around in circles this much at this point, but so I'm going to stop talking. But I really do appreciate you calling in, and it's always good to hear from you.
And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers.
A couple of episodes ago, we had a Nilbog abscond with an artifact, the Invulnerable Coat of Arnd, from a second level party that had been working with the garrison in the dungeon, in the river keep, I'm sorry. And so they decided to set off after him. I determined that even though it was raining, the ranger was able to pick up the track of the Nilbog. So the party would have been able to borrow some spare war horses from the garrison, and the war horses move at 15 inches. The goblin only move. It is a goblin. The Nilbog, which is the goblin with magical, I don't know if you call it a disease, or an infection, but some kind of a magical condition that reverses a lot of how people react to it otherwise. Only moves at 6 inches. I'm not sure why that's the case, but that is the case according to Monster Manual 2. So, no, Fiend Folio. So the party that is pursuing is the remaining magic user, the paladin, the ranger, one of the heavy footmen. The injured heavy footman will stay behind with the cleric who had gotten reduced to 0 hit points and is going to have to spend a week in recovery. But they'll catch up to the Nilbog before the end of the day. And they'll also have their charmed Nilbog with them. The other Nilbog was charmed by them. So we're going to roll for encounter distance, but we're going to roll for surprise first because that could affect the distance. Is the Nilbog surprised? With a 3, no. When they finally run across Nilbog, are they surprised exactly where he is? With a 6, no. All right, so 6d4. This will be -1 because of the forest area that they're in. So we got a 3, so that's a 2. So we got a 4, that's a 3, so that gives us 5. A 2, that's a 1, that's a 6. A 4, so that's a 3, so that's a 9. A 1, that doesn't add anything to it. And a 4, so 12 inches away, they run across them. So the party has made the decision that they're going to try to simply grapple this Nilbog to remove the artifact and hope that they can move fast enough that the Nilbog condition will not affect them. So let's roll initiative here for the Nilbog. A 6. Ooh. For the party, a 4. So the Nilbog is going to try to evade. So working through the AD&D DM's guide, evasion, base chance of evading is 80% outdoors. If the pursuer is faster, that's -20%.
If we are in scrubs, hills, marsh, plus 10%, forest or mountains, plus 30%. So we'll use the plus 30%. So that's going to put us up to 90% there. Size involved. Pursued party totals less than 6 creatures plus 10%. So that kicks it up to 100%. Pursuing party has fewer than 12 creatures. That's going to be minus 20. So back down to 80%. Light equal to full daylight. And so that because they would have caught up in just a couple of hours, so it was morning. So it'd be full daylight. That's minus 30%. That's a 50% chance for evasion. Is there any other interesting factor here? All right, let's take a look here. Procedure. Find the chance for evasion. The pursued party rolls percentile dice if the number generated is less than or equal to the adjusted base chance of evasion. Then they've had immediate success eluding the pursuers. Otherwise, pursuit continues unless the pursuers are faster than the pursued and can close within 1 hour, in which case confrontation must take place. So let's break out our percentile dice. It's a 50-50 chance of evading, ducking, and weaving. Well, that is a 12-sided dice, so that is not the correct die. So we'll try that again. And with a 6%, the Nilbog successfully evades. So can the Ranger pick up the track again? We're about 2 hours in now, so it's going to be the base 95% minus 25% per hour in the rain. So we'll be at a 40% chance of picking up that trail. And it rolls a 36%, so just barely picks up the track. And so we'll roll that evasion percentage again one more time to see if he can. Well, let's see. Do they surprise the Nilbog this time? With a 2, they do. Are they surprised when they run across him? With a 6, they aren't. So they are able to get to the Nilbog. It'll take them one of the segments. Well, let's see what the distance is that they catch up to him at. Again, we're going to be -1, and it'll be -2 overall for the surprise as well. So here we go. We roll a 3, so that's 2. We roll a 1, that's nothing. We roll a 3, that's 2 more. We roll a 3, that's 2 more. We roll a 4, that's 3 more. We roll a 1, that's none. So that's a total of 9 inches. So they're going to be able to close the distance, I believe. Let me take a look at the surprise segments and distance travel. All right, so it looks like they'll be able to close with the first round of surprise, the first segment of surprise. And since the horses are so fast and the distance is not the full distance of the horse, they should be able to dismount and attempt to grapple. The Ranger will actually get 3 segments of surprise because Rangers get to do that. So they will attempt to overbear to take this Nilbog to the ground. So we'll start off with the Ranger. He's got the highest dexterity, so we'll let him take the first shot. He has an armor class. So as they approach, we're going to have to see about the Nilbog effect again. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to roll against their wisdom and see if they can avoid the effects of Nilbogism. Actually, no, let's go with a saving throw. What kind of saving throw looks good about against Nilbogism? Let's see. What it alters what you're doing. It affects you in that way that it's affecting your mind. So let's go with you know what? Let's treat it as a psionic attack. So we factor the attack creature's total intelligence and wisdom, and then get a saving throw. So we'll have the Ranger has a total of 31, which would be a short range saving throw of 6 or better. And the Ranger fails, rolling a 3. All right, so let's see. The Paladin has a total of 31, also needing a 6 or better. Rolls a 13, so succeeds. The other magic user has a total of 27, so it's going to need an 8 or better. 18 rolls well. I don't have stats for the heavy footman, so let's roll some stats up for him real quick. Intelligence of only an intelligence of 7 and a wisdom of 8. So that's 15. So he's going to need to roll a 14 or better, a 2. So the Ranger and Heavy Footman suddenly wonder why they're attacking and just stop dead in their tracks. And the other two continue on to attempt to overbear this Nilbog. So the base score for that is the same as the base score for a grapple. So again, it starts off with armor class times 10. The Paladin's armor class is a -2 because of all the heavy armor. So I guess that makes it a -20% to start off with. That's a -2% for the Paladin, -20% for the Paladin to hit. Dexterity per point is +1%. The Paladin has a 16 dexterity, so that pumps him up to a -4%. The Defender's armor protection, Nilbog armor class 6 is going to fall in the chain ring scale range. That's +20%. So now we're at +16% chance to hit. Opponent is slowed or stunned. Opponent base speed is 3% faster. Opponent hasted. Let's count surprise as being stunned since he's unable to move. So that's +20%. So we're up to plus 36%. 36% base chance to overbear. A chance to take this Nilbog to the ground. And a 55%. The Paladin whiffs, apparently. So the magic user has an armor class of 10. So 100% plus dexterity plus all the others. So that's going to be an auto hit. So then we go to the overbearing table. Attacker's strength per point was 6. That one has an 11, so that's 11. Opponent is slowed or 1 foot held. Opponent stunned or both feet held. We're counting that, so that's plus 20%. So 31% plus 10% weight this difference. A Nilbog is a small creature, so I'm going to give that. We'll say that against a medium-sized creature, a small creature, 4 feet high, it's probably about a 20% weight difference. 20 to 30% weight difference. Let's say 20%. Height difference is going to be roughly 6 foot to 4 foot, 5.5 foot to 4 foot, which would be about call that about 20%. So getting back to what we were saying, we were 31% plus 20%, 55%, 65%. So 65%. And it doesn't look like anything else applies. So 65% plus the percentile dice to get a result. That's 81 plus 65. That's 140 plus percent over 100%. Opponent is knocked flat and stunned for 1 round, taking hit points of 4 plus strength bonus. Now, this, of course, is added to that Nilbog's hit points because that's the way it works with the Nilbog. But the magic user does get him on the ground and stuns him. So that's going to be sufficient for the magic user and the paladin to tie him up. And actually, let's see, they may have to fight their own people or at least have an argument with them. So let's roll a reaction check. How will their friends react to this, since they are not certain why they're attacking the Nilbog, because now they're viewing him as a friend again. 56%, that's 55% positive result. And a 46%, that gives them a positive result. So they are able to tie up this Nilbog and then probably take their companions just away to give them a chance to recover. And then they approach again. So we're going to give them another round of saving throws. And if they succeed this time, then they will be able to remove the artifact from the Nilbog. So we'll just have the paladin and the magic user roll this time. The paladin with his 31 just needs a 6 or better and passes with an 18. The magic user is going to need an 8 or better, and with a 9 passes. So they are able to recover the artifact, and they're going to have a discussion about what to do with this Nilbog, because they don't this thing has been wandering around and influencing them. And so will they decide to take him prisoner, or will they decide to kill him and be done with it? Or will they decide to let him go and just be done with him since they recovered their artifact? So I'm going to say it's going to be only about a 10% chance that they set him free, and then a 30% chance, a 25% chance that they elect to just kill him, and then the remainder is taking him prisoner. So if they roll under 10%, 10% or under, set him free. 35% or under, 11% to 35%, kill him, and then otherwise take him with them. And a 21%, so they just kill the Nilbog. Now, will that have any effect on the other Nilbog that is with them? So the spell causes them to regard the caster as a trusted friend and ally, to be heeded and protected. The spell does not able to control them, but any word or action will be viewed in its most favorable way. So I'm going to say they are able to convince the Nilbog that this was the best case scenario. So they recover the invulnerable coat of Arnd and return to the River Keep that day, by the end of the day. And that will take us into the next day, next time. The opening theme of this podcast was Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. If you have any thoughts or feedback, you can get in touch with me by leaving me a voice message on my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. That's 864-209-1441. Or through SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. That's www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. Or you can send me a message or an audio file on Discord, where I can be found the Pink Phantom, or through email, phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. That's phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. I don't have to play or read your feedback on the podcast if that is not your preference. Just let me know.